Alright, hello everyone, I am Mr. Rain, and today I'm covering something a little bit different. Insurgency Sandstorm still, but they just released a second survey to talk more about the game and what it offers, so I've already started to fill it out, pretty much already did from the beginning. I just want to go over it and essentially give a more in-depth answers because some of these questions are a little too vague and some of them need a dialog box when they don't. So, starting off, just ask for a few cosmetics, which I don't really care for, to be honest. Whatever it is, it is. Following weapon upgrade types do you want to see more of? You can choose optics, underbarrel, regular barrel, magazine, side rail. I chose side rail just for the flashlights, because even though the maps are day and they are talking about night maps, I do think that a flashlight can still be somewhat effective in like dark rooms and dark corners, even in a day map. So, um, there's a popular question about having commander and observer loadouts nerfed in such a way so that whoever picks those roles will only play as a commander or observer, and they won't have enough utility to keep them alive on themselves. They would kind of have to rely on each other. I think it's a neat idea. I think it could work. I don't really have an opinion as to which one would work better. That's why I said I feel none of these changes. This is one of those questions where I feel it needs to have a dialog box, because I could say either other or a dialog box, because maybe this will help, maybe it won't. I can't tell you for sure. It will only happen when we actually throw it into the game. Um, the negatives I will say is that if you only give the commander and observer, let's see, in this third one, where the commander gets only a pistol and observer gets only one primary plus other usual equipment, it sounds good. It may work, but then your commander is going to be extremely nerfed. So if you're playing skirmish or push, your commander isn't going to be working on your commander isn't going to be able to work on any of those, actual firefights. He can only drop in artillery or any support. And I'm not going to say that it's a bad thing for that to happen, but what I will say is that it's kind of an over nerf. The second one, limit the commander observer loadouts and versus to only one primary weapon, plus other usual equipment. And I feel that's a little more balanced. I think that's probably the better option out of all of these, just to not give them, again, a lot of utility. I think the better idea, like, or another idea maybe, is have it so they can only use a base weapon and maybe one attachment. So instead of having an M4 with a foregrip and a suppressor, they can have an M4 and they have to choose between a foregrip or a suppressor. They can't fully kit out their main primary rifle. Make it so that they can have weapons, but that they're only baseline weapons. They're nothing special. They're not going to be extremely loaded out, so it encourages players to use them. It's going to be baseline, it's going to have base recoil, unless you grab a foregrip, and that's about it. I think that may be the better change, but I don't play the game modes that do have Commander and Observer, other than co-op. So, again, this kind of stuff doesn't really affect me. What I will say is that however it works in skirmish or push should work differently for those modes, but it should still work pretty much the same way as it does now for co-op. In co-op, you really do need every single person to have a gun and have good loadouts and have good utility. You can't really have a commander or an observer or both of them be limited to one primary or only pistols, or only sidearms. So that's my opinion on it. So let's just keep moving. When ejecting a player from commander or observer slot and moving them into rifleman role, if they do not use fire support after a certain amount of time, have a positive effect. Yes, it does. And again, this is another one that needs to have a dialog box, because I would also say that is a solution. I think that would work. But I also think that there needs to be a voting solution, because you do have guys who play these matches a lot, and they know how to use commander, they know how to use observer. And I feel not just ejecting them from that role if they are not using their fire support, but being able to kick them out by a majority vote if um, if they're not using fire support as well, because you either have to wait for the timer. Like, there's no real true solution, because if you wait for a timer, then all the guy can do in order to troll is simply not use fire support until a certain amount of time, and then use it at the very last second so he doesn't get kicked out of the role. And then also, if you were to vote kick, then that would mean that you could have an entire clan, entire group that goes into the match, and then they're vote kicking people out of Commander Observer so that they can use those slots. So there isn't really a true solution, but one of them is better than the other, if not both at the same time. So that's my opinion on it. Again, not really something that affects me directly, because I don't play those game modes, but just my opinion on it. The advisor class, what statement most accurately summarizes it? Basically, first one is saying that's helpful, and it includes weapons that you typically wouldn't see in Insurgency, or the other one saying that it's too limited of a class and it should be removed. Obviously, I feel the prior. I think the advisor class is a pretty neat class. I like the L85, I like the Alpha AK. I like seeing these unique weapons that you don't typically see or you don't typically get your hands on. You know, there's a lot of times where I'm just playing casual, I'm just thinking like, you know, I'm kind of tired of using my primary weapon, I want to try something else. That's what the advisor class essentially fills the gap in for. Right now though, it is a pretty weak class because each class I think only has 3 weapons on both sides for advisor. And on a certain side, you get the SBD, so on a certain side, you get 2 classes that have access to a DMR, and then on security side, you have access to a 7.62, a 5.56, and then the L85, which is a decent gun. So, you know, it's a bit unbalanced between the 2 factions, I feel. But again, it's designed for unique weapons. It's not designed specifically for balance, it's just more for show. And again, I think that's very important for a game like this to have a class like that where you can kind of relax and use a weapon that's not going to handle the same way as your typical weapons. Moving to number 8, which classic Insurgency 2014 map? Station Viewers Tell. Very, very obvious, you know, very easy statement. These are all maps from the original Insurgency. I don't like Brew Riz. I'm okay with Tell, but it's not a great map. I would rather see Tell be like gets a little bit of a redesign because it's very narrow, and or Station. And for me, this is essentially the lesser of the 3 evils. I'm not a fan of any 3 of these maps in particular. I don't hate them a whole lot. They're not the worst maps that Insurgency 2014 has, but out of the bunch, I would pick Station. Do you feel the game would benefit from being able to vote kick immediately? A player from team can... So are they saying, do you want vote kick in the game? Yes, absolutely. Do you feel the game would benefit from player reporting? Yes, absolutely. Again, reporting can be abused, but again, it's better to have it there just for the sake of it being there than to just not have it at all and allow toxic behavior to happen overall. Since Insurgency 2014, this has always been an issue, and vote kick has always been a great way to counter a lot of this negative, toxic aspects of the community. That's not to say I won't get rid of it by introducing both of these systems, but hey, again, it's better to have something than nothing, and right now, we have nothing. So that's what I feel. And this is basically, this little checkerboard is essentially, well, what do you typically see in games? And so, do you see players using hacks? Typically, I don't. I probably did have ran across a hacker or 2, but not very often. It's probably one of the lowest amount of times I've played against a hacker in any game, to be honest. Other than Rocket League, which isn't really hackable, or it would be very intensive as to how to hack that game. I get matched with players who abuse me with others, or others through voice or text. Absolutely. I'll actually put down on 7, because it happens in pretty much every single round. or in every single game, but I'll be nice and say 7 because it is an issue. It does need to be taken care of. But you also have a mute function in the game, so as long as there's a mute function, I'm not going to put that at a 10. I get matched with players who griefs or attempts to disrupt normal gameplay. Absolutely happens once every other round or once every other game. Sometimes it happens in 2 or 3 games in a row, but that's only because it's the same person doing the same thing in each game. So it's not necessarily that there's a whole lot of griefers, it's just that you're constantly getting teamed up or matched up with the griefer in every single game or every other game. So it's definitely an issue that needs to be taken care of. I get matched with a player using level exploits or glitches. Again, I don't typically see that. Maybe once or twice, but out of general casual play, I don't see it. I typically don't see it. I get matched into a game that ends shortly. Yep, I get that. Again, maybe not every other round, but like 1 out of every 4 games that I get into, one of them is about finished. The only thing that's missing from this list is that I get matched into a game that's using the same map that I just played, because that happens a lot in this game. I end up playing the same map 2 or 3 times in a row, and it gets a bit frustrating. And then there are days where we're playing, and then I get matched not only with the same map, I get matched with the same rotation of maps. So I'm only playing the same 3 maps for about an hour, and it really just gets upsetting having to go through the same 3 maps over and over and over again. And again, I play Firefight a lot, so in Firefight there's a lot more maps to choose from than Skirmish or Push. So it's a bit frustrating to keep getting the same 3 maps, the same variation of the same 3 maps, time and time again, and not really getting into Refinery or into any of the other maps. So typically don't end up in a loop where Refinery is in there. Typically the loop is Farmhouse, Precinct West, and sometimes Canyon, I think is the name of the other map. And I don't really get Refinery a whole lot of times, and I don't get Precinct East as much as I would like. So it just feels like the rotations are a bit off in regards to map, just matchmaking in casual at least. The ideal match length for versus Firefight. This is one that I feel needs to have a box or another option, because I don't want to have I don't want to have competitive Firefight be 15 rounds or anything that's going to take a half an hour or an hour to get through. I'd much rather it be first to 6, yeah, which is what they're saying. And then this is for non-competitive Firefight, which is right now way too quick. It's first to 3, and it's not even. It's first to 3, and then it ties at 2-2. If you tie at 2-2, then the game is done. So it needs to be at least first to 4, maybe first to 5. Let me see, which I think is what they're saying here. So let me actually pick that 8 rounds maximum, because there's, again, I feel that a lot of the times when I join in on a Firefight match late, like, if we're 2 rounds into a Firefight match, the game is pretty much over. You're only playing maybe a round after that second match, and other times you may not even play a round because one team may get all 3 wins in a row. So I think this would work the best. Right now, versus Firefight Casual needs more rounds. They're saying which new game modes you would like to see for Versus. Tug of War from Frontline Day of Infamy. I feel Push kind of does that already. Or the VIP Escort Ambush mode from Insurgency 2014. This is the one that I feel is going to win because there's a lot of push for that mode. So definitely why I picked that. And I'm definitely going to be playing Ambush a lot more than Tug of War. And then the other one is King of Hill or Domination Inspired. I would like to get more information, because I like King of the Hill and I also like Domination. And we already have Domination in the form of Firefight, So what is this domination going to play like? Are we actually going to have waves, or is it still going to be elimination type like firefight? I would like a little more information, but for the sake of this survey, I'll just pick it just to see if it does get picked, what it's going to be in the long run. And then this is recoil for each weapons and so forth. Essentially, pick and choose what you feel is right or wrong to you. Those were my options. These are mine. And I know I do have a weapons comparison series, and I'm going to get further into this in a second. Recoil for these weapons while firing when crouched. Recoil for firing when prone and ADSing. And then rate the damage of these weapon categories, blah 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 blah. It goes on for quite a while. Supply cost. The MP7 for sure needs to have a lesser supply cost. An MP7 should cost the same as an MP5, or an MP7 with 40 rounds should cost the same as an MP5 plus 1. And right now it doesn't. Right now you can get the MP5 cheaper and kit it out and have a far better weapon than the MP7. So I feel that needs some love. I picked the SKS just because it's an SKS. I think anything you can do to make that weapon more appealing by making it cost less or doing something to make it worthwhile would be for the better. I don't really care about a whole lot of these others. Again, so I just went down the row. What else? Light armor if fuel works right. Heavy armor if fuel works right. Same with light and heavy carrier. Gas mask I don't care about. For weapons and weapon recoil, the only thing that I wish they had was another box, because if they had anything if they wanted more explanation as to why I feel one way or the other. I already covered this on 2 videos. I'm not going to go into it again. You can watch those if you like. I don't think suppression should affect recoil. It's a big topic. It's a heavy topic. I don't want to get into it in this video. But what I will say is that suppression should affect recoil, or if it will, to lower that effect, because right now it's near impossible to counterfire the way it is. That's all I'm going to get into it. Movement speed. Movement speed is I'm actually going to rate fine. Acceleration, I'm not going to rate it as fair. Aiming down sight, I'm not going to rate it as fair. The reason why is because I didn't realize this, but when you have a light carrier, when you're holding medium weight or a heavy weight, you're not only are you slower in running, but you're also slower in your actual aiming and aiming down sights. And I feel that needs to be buffed. If you're going to mix up the meta, if you want to encourage people to have a heavier loadout, then you have to make it worthwhile. You have to let them have a little more movement, a little more agility. Maybe not in speed, but at least in ADSing. Personally, I feel ADS should be the same down the board, and it should only vary depending on the weapon you're holding. So a battle rifle should take longer to ADS than an SMG, and a short barrel rifle should take shorter to ADS than a regular rifle, and so on and so forth. It really should just be incremental depending on the weapon you're holding and not so much on the amount of weight you have. That's my opinion. And then the last thing is weapon sway while ADSing. I will only say that prone should have some sway. I don't think it has enough. And that's really it. And that's the end of the survey. So it's a decent survey. It gets through a lot. It asks a lot of questions. Some of them I feel are unfair. Like the whole thing with the supply points. Like, you would literally would have to dedicate time to going into the game, figuring out, okay, how much does this gun cost? How much does it take to get it to where it needs to be, usable? Are the attachments too expensive for it, or they're not expensive enough? And then having to go down that list over and over and over again. And the only one that can really give any real feedback to is for the MP7 because I made a video on that. And if I did make that video on that, I would say, yeah, the MP7's fine. And it's not. The MP7 is a little too expensive for what you get out of it. So, again, it's a bit unfair the way that they're asking this. I know there's people who are dedicated to doing this kind of survey and they're dedicated to giving you the right information. But I feel this is a little too specific to get into. It's a good question. I'm glad you're asking it. I'm not going to take that away at all. I'm just simply saying for a more casual player, or you're not really going to get a more accurate description. But yeah, that's really it for the survey. I definitely would advise everyone to take the survey and answer it however you feel. You don't have to agree with me. You can disagree with everything that I said. You can be the exact opposite of me. Just take it, give these guys the feedback. Everything that they get out of this definitely does help them in development. And I do want to see this game improve. So that's it for this video. Thank you all for watching. I am Mr. Rain, and I will catch you guys in the next one.